SCP-2480, an unfinished ritual. A strange coastal town in Massachusetts, filled with odd locals that keep to themselves, and the site of a religious organization that consorts with inhuman entities. This is the setting for H.P. Lovecraft's story, The Shadow over Innsmouth, but also the setting of SCP-2480. The Lovecraftian influences and similarities don't end there, as we'll see, but 2480 also stands on its own 2 feet within the SCP universe by blending in elements of Sarkicism. If you haven't already viewed my video on Sarkicism, I highly recommend doing so first before continuing. This is a story in which neither the GOC nor the SCP Foundation come off as incredibly competent, and develops into a much bigger problem than at first glance. The first line of the description reads that SCP-2480 is speculated to be a dimensional anomaly in a coastal Massachusetts town, meaning that the Foundation still hasn't confirmed if that's the truth or not. There's a crossed out section in which they blame the inept and heavy-handed Global Occult Coalition for creating the anomaly when they interrupted a ritual in 1952, which had an unknown purpose. This would seem to be no longer believed by the Foundation, but we'll have to keep reading to find out what exactly is going on. They do know, however, that the anomaly is centered around a mansion in the town, known as Bodefell Manor, the previous home of a millionaire industrialist with an interest in the occult, named Cornelius P. Bodefell III, who coincidentally, or not so coincidentally, died in 1952. A footnote tells us that Bodefell was also known as Karcist Sulkisk, revealing that Sarkicism was likely a key component of that ritual. In the later years of his life, Bodefell was the leader of a secret society known as Adytum's Wake, named after the capital of the Sarkic Empire. The Foundation looked into Adytum's Wake in 1932, but dismissed it as another decadent upper-class social club. Strike one for the Foundation. None of the GOC operatives sent to interrupt the ritual in 1952 survived, but the Foundation did investigate one of their nearby safe houses, finding a number of burnt documents related to their mission. Part of one was intact, detailing a humanoid entity known as Grand Karcist Eon, who we of course know as the earthly leader of the Sarkic cults. The GOC were clearly not certain of much of their info on Eon, and in fact, with their only known photograph of him, they're unsure if he's the humanoid in the forefront or the manifested face in the background. Despite their uncertainty though, it was the GOC's mission to assassinate Grand Karcist Eon, so they must have had reason to believe that he was going to be present at the ritual site. Foundation operatives were alerted to the mission after intercepting a GOC distress broadcast, sending in an investigation team. The team discovered 36 bodies scattered across the mansion, 5 of them being GOC operatives that had shot themselves, the other 31 having been killed through anomalous means, such as implosion, disintegration, and fatal physical reconfiguration. The Foundation, however, did not find Grand Karcist Eon's body among the deceased, leading them to believe the GOC ultimately failed their mission. They discovered that the mansion was under the effects of some sort of subtle dimensional anomaly, changing room sizes in impossible ways and other similar phenomena, usually only noticeable through sustained viewing or well on perception-altering chemicals. The anomaly is marked as safe, the Foundation gets to laugh at the GOC for being incompetent, and that's that. Of course, that's not that, as the Foundation did their standard investigation into the manor, and that's when things started to spiral out of control. They uncovered numerous journals and photographs that detailed the parties that Adytum's Wake had at Bodefell Manor, involving rape, pedophilia, ritual human sacrifice, and cannibalism. All par for the course for Sarkics. Guest lists, however, included members of affluent families, respected politicians, leaders of industry, and even those of religious authority. It also became clear that this was more than just classic secret society fun, as they uncovered sermon notes and religious scripture, including some sort of religious tome written in an unknown language. A statue in the main hall of the manor depicted an entity with a lion's head and a worm-like body, determined to be a representation of the Demiurge, which we know in the SCP universe as Yaldabaoth, principal deity of Sarkicism. At the base of the statue, written in Greek, are the words, "Desire is the measure of all things. Be unbound from moral tethers. Do as you will, to whom you will." This is a common proverb among Neo-Sarkics, as the will to power is the primary driving force of man, and the key to achieving godhood, according to them. Things were quiet for a number of years after this initial investigation, with a small Foundation facility set up nearby to monitor Bodefell Manor in the town. Biannual reports were sent every year for decades, all of which reported no changes of any kind on the dimensional anomaly. In 1988, however, the head of the facility at the time, Simon Oswalt, failed to send a report on time. At first, the Foundation just assumed it was some sort of bureaucratic error, probably not a big deal. But after attempting to contact the site and receiving no response, 2 agents were sent to personally investigate. In classic horror fashion, they were never heard from again. Since something was almost certainly wrong, Mobile Task Force Epsilon 6, Village Idiots, was sent in to re-establish contact. They integrated themselves into the town as new residents and tourists, and were provided a log of their encounters. 6 days after arrival, an agent writes that he detects a certain wrongness in the town, something he can't quite put his finger on. He saw a man mowing his lawn at midnight, and a man at the fish market that simply stared at him without blinking. He also mentions a subtle, pungent smell of neither fish nor the sea. 11 days in, another agent complains about the hotel he's staying in, writing that people run about all hours of the night. The night before, he looked out the peephole from his room and saw a face, and the person immediately began to slam their head against the door, over and over. 16 days in, an agent writes that they know their target is Bodefell Manor, but for some reason Command is not letting them go in. A drunk man approached her and asked if she was a Fed. After lying and saying yes, the man began talking about monsters in the fog, who screamed their secrets, and it's been like this for over 40 years. They apparently found him dead the next day, with the locals claiming he drowned. The agent isn't convinced. 20 days in, another agent remarks that the town possesses a rather miserable appearance, covered in fog and always raining, with even the trees looking sad. The majority of locals keep to themselves, rarely smile, and look tired and sickly. The agent came across a group of kids in the street, gathered around something, who scattered once he approached. He discovered that the children had been taking bites out of a partially flayed, dead dog. 30 days in now, 2 of the agents went poking around an abandoned building in town, discovering the interior covered in various symbols and gibberish. They also found a TV that looked like it came from the 50s or 60s, and a set of 4 TV dinner trays with half-eaten meals still sitting there. They caught a glimpse of someone and chased them upstairs, finding no one. One of the agents thinks they were chasing their own shadows, perhaps literally. 7 days later, an agent writes that they haven't heard from one of their fellow agents for 7 days. They went to where he was staying and found all the doors and windows locked, found only the agent's fingerprints, and the TV was still running. It's as if he ceased to exist. 39 days in, another agent recounts his attempts at gaining information from a local dive bar. He conversed with an old fisherman, who began crying about how Bodfell had taken 2 of his sisters and a brother. The agent can't get a straight answer on whether he meant the millionaire or the estate itself. He says the fisherman was delirious by the end of the conversation, going on about how the town has a God-shaped hole in it. You might remember that phrase from my video on the Hanged King, although I'll leave it to your speculation if that's a meaningful connection. The final log comes from 40 days into the investigation, written by an agent that was having a few beers with a fellow agent at the docks while comparing notes. The other agent said he felt like he was being followed, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. This is the agent that couldn't sleep in his hotel. Suddenly, the agent's eyes go wide as the air begins to smell of a thunderstorm, and in the next instant, he implodes. The agent says that he was killed by some sort of invisible force, turning him into slurry, and he claims to have felt a presence the entire time. He says that it felt like something wanted him to know that it could do that to him as well at any moment. Fans of Lovecraft's works might find this death similar to Abdul al-Hazred's, who was said to have been devoured by an invisible monster in broad daylight. A crowd of locals had seen the agent's demise, with some of them smiling, but they simply went on with their routines. The agent finishes the log by wishing that they could just raze this place and be done with it. We're then given a series of logs from a doctor that has been studying SCP-2480 in the surrounding town, named Dr. Calixto Narvaez. A number of unusual observations have been made regarding the town. It seems that the locals excessively procreate, with the average household having 12 children, and 80% of these children lack birth certificates or social security numbers. The doctor suspects religious reasoning for this. Many residents also appear to have difficulty with memory retention, mental fatigue, and subtle hallucinations. The use of hallucinogens among the townfolk is non-existent, though, although they consume 200% more alcohol than the statewide average. Another record they set in Massachusetts is the number of disappearances, the highest in the state, although this has been blamed on the dense forests and marshlands around the town by law enforcement agencies. Both local residents and transients are involved in disappearances, reported and unreported. There are also many suspicious deaths within the town, with anomalous causes, although this is inexplicably dismissed by law enforcement. A woman was found with her body structurally inverted, and police concluded that this was self-inflicted. Overall, a general malaise and apathy blankets the local populace, which is pretty clear at this point. The doctor goes on to say that they're dealing with an anomaly that exists beyond their normal human senses. In 1976, he was sent to Brazil to investigate a similar community, and he came across an indigenous tribe in the Amazon that were aware of the anomaly. He discussed things with the tribe's shaman, learning that they commonly referred to entities that lurked beyond human sight as none stand where they do. These entities apparently were responsible for an affliction they called soul sickness, and they blamed it on colonists wounding nature. The shaman gave the doctor a plant-based concoction that contained the chemical N,N-dimethyltryptamine, DMT, a powerful psychedelic drug. The doctor experienced the world as they saw it, but dismissed it as a hallucination. He goes on to say, though, that DMT can enhance one's perception, allowing one to perceive reality for what it really is. He requested access to DMT to further investigate SCP-2480, which is approved. To go back to Lovecraft, this is essentially the plot of From Beyond, with a drug instead of a device. Dr. Narvaez enters the town connected via video and audio to his assistant outside of town, and intends to observe his surroundings before administering the DMT. Either he didn't notice anything unusual, or he was simply impatient, as the next line in the log shows him taking the drug. He immediately notices colors growing more vivid, and a yellow fog cloaking the town. He also now notices a number of robed figures walking through the town, their outfits seemingly stitched together from leathers and hides, although he can't see their faces, and feels instinctively that he should not look upon them. The locals also don't make eye contact with these figures, but they do move to avoid them. The doctor's assistant, who can only see normal reality through the video feed, notes that the buildings in the town look normal to him, but the doctor remarks that they appear to be in a state of ruin, covered in a pulsating, fleshy material. He also sees a black fluid with an amber sheen flowing through a drainage system, as well as a black ziggurat in the center of town where the church should be, but his assistant can't see either. A number of the robed entities prostrate themselves in front of the ziggurat, and the doctor also sees an abnormally tall one holding several odd creatures by a leash that resembles intestines. The creatures move about with a frenzied pace, showing pale but muscular flesh, and rows of needle-like teeth in their mouths. The assistant says he sees a teacher with young students, and then sees a few of the students bullying another. But the doctor sees the creatures ganging up on the runt of the group and ripping into it with talons. The doctor also looks and sees tall spires composed of some sort of organic material towering over the town, but he still must acquire proof that this hidden world is real and not just a hallucination. He returns to where he saw the black fluid and fills a bottle with it as the effects of the DMT wear off. The bottle appears to be empty, but he can feel the weight of the liquid inside of it. He ends his first log by remarking that he also recalls seeing black banners with a yellow spiral-like symbol on them, feeling as if he's seen it before, but not sure where. After being removed from the town, the liquid became visible, just as the doctor saw it, and after initial analysis, seems to be a semi-gelatinous substance containing structures resembling mitochondria, with high levels of unidentified fatty acids. Basically, the Foundation has no idea what this goop is. The doctor goes back for further investigation, alongside two members of the MTF. They re-enter the house that was occupied by the agent that vanished, and the doctor takes some more DMT. He then perceives the house as it truly is, covered in blood and excrement, describing the experience as like what he imagines biting into a rotten tumor would feel like. Above the couch, he sees words written on the wall, reading, "He is dreaming war. Adytum will rise," alongside indecipherable symbols. As they search the cellar, the doctor sees a large spiral painted on a wall and approaches it. As he does so, the wall disappears, leaving the spiral floating in the air, and he finds a staircase behind it. The assistant informs him that he walked into a wall and the camera went black. But what really happened is the wall never existed in the first place, just an illusion for human eyes. The agents close their eyes and walk through the wall to join the doctor, and the three descend the stairs. They lose contact with the assistant, their GPS signal goes out, and the walls are leaking a sap-like substance. The tunnel they're walking in branches out into many different directions, and after continuing down a branch for a few minutes, they come across a rotted wooden door. They walk through it, and emerge outside in a field on the other side of town. The same yellow fog blankets the area, and the doctor takes another dose of DMT. The remainder of the log is written after the fact, as it seems disaster struck at that point. The doctors saw a silhouette of a massive humanoid, over 4 meters, or 13 feet in height, shambling out of the fog. It had pale, flabby flesh, a large tooth-filled mouth, 3 fingers on each hand, and no visible eyes, ears, or nostrils. Its teeth and hands were seemingly covered in blood. A footnote implies that this is just one of many similar entities, referred to now by MTFs as behemoths. The behemoth charges at the group, grabbing one of the agents with one hand and disemboweling him with its teeth. The doctor and the remaining agent attempt to run through the fields back to the shed so they can re-enter the tunnels. And the doctor looks down at the ground to see that they're walking on what looks like diseased flesh instead of soil. With each step, the ground splinters and gushes like an infected, pus-filled wound. And suddenly, the agent is grabbed by some sort of red tendrils coming from the ground, an entity now referred to by MTFs as a snatcher. The snatcher pulls the agent into a small hole, crushing her bones in the process as she is forcibly dragged underground. The doctor runs without looking back and manages to escape. This is clearly a bigger problem than just a weird town, and so we're introduced to Project Sitra Achra, Aramaic for Other Side. A letter from an O5 informs us that, left unchecked, SCP-2480 will cause a change in the dominant species of life on the planet by the year 2030. The dimensional anomaly in Massachusetts is allowing some other world to bleed into ours, operating on a different level of perception than our baseline reality. Genetic analysis of these entities has revealed that they are mostly human, but the Foundation has no idea where they came from or what caused humans to change in such a way. They are able to cloak themselves in a version of our reality, which is what the town resembles to an average person, but their true forms are deeply grotesque. They've named a number of the entities, including behemoths, snatchers, jabberers, and fiends, and the MTFs are capable of killing them, although first-month survival rate of active duty on 2480 hovers around 55%. We then learn that Sitra Achra is a joint operation between the SCP Foundation and the GOC, a rare situation where the two groups work together. MTF Psi-9, Abyss Gazers, was formed as a joint task force of battalion-level strength, trained in unconventional warfare and the use of heavy artillery, DMT, and counter-occult stratagems. It took this super team of elite soldiers 12 years to reclaim Bodefell Manor and the former Foundation facility, and they suffered heavy casualties in the process. They also managed to apprehend the head of that facility, Simon Oswald, and the document claims that this has greatly diminished or possibly neutralized the threat of SCP-2480, as Oswald was believed to be controlling the entities through pheromones. A vivisection of Oswald revealed the absence of all internal organs except for his brains, lungs, and heart, and the pineal gland in his brain was 8 times larger than normal. Again, possibly a reference to From Beyond. Oswald seems to suffer no pain from the vivisection, nor does he seem to be affected by it at all. So of course, an interview is done with him. He begins by saying that he would prefer to be called Carcist Carvis, and refers to the interviewer as an unwashed one. He goes on to explain that he kept a number of people in town so that they could continue to breed, as fresh materials are always in demand. He was apparently known among the Foundation as a dullard, and so he was the perfect choice for a dead-end position of monitoring SCP-2480. Soon after taking the position, however, he was apparently approached by Grand Carcist Eon, who he says saw his full potential, His body was altered, and he became fully loyal to the Sarkic cults. The interview is cut short when Oswald threatens to nail the interviewer to the wall and to make him dance like a meat puppet. He then amputates his own arms as he breaks his restraints and squirms along the ground before being restrained again. The final addendum simply reads, on 11/24/2014, anomalies similar to SCP-2480 were reported in Romania. Investigation is currently ongoing. There's a lot left unsaid with SCP-2480 in true Lovecraftian fashion, but it's pretty clear that it represents a rather dire threat. Although the document claims that the entity ceased to be a threat once Oswald was captured, they didn't exactly stop the dimensional anomaly, as that existed prior to Oswald's betrayal. Additionally, the fact that other dimensional anomalies just like it are starting to pop up in other places is certainly a very bad sign. The major threat of Sarkicism has often been considered to be SCP-610, the Red Death, but they seem to have many more tricks up their sleeves. If it took 12 years for a super team of operatives to reclaim one site of these anomalies, it's going to be quite a struggle for the Foundation to contain them. The story of Sarkicism is an ongoing one, and it remains to be seen whether there will ultimately be a grand conclusion, or it will simply continue in some form for the rest of time. Either way, SCP-2480 is a very interesting modern take on Lovecraftian horror, combined with the resources and capabilities of the SCP Foundation and the threats they face.
Hey there, fellow explorers. Just wanted to take a quick minute here to talk about the sponsor for this video, ExpressVPN. Security and privacy on the internet is more important than ever, and using a VPN is a great way to ensure both. ExpressVPN is a market-leading VPN that is effective, affordable, and completely simple to use. It works on Windows, Macs, and Linux computers, as well as iOS and Android devices and more. All it takes is a few seconds to connect to servers around the world, and ExpressVPN allows for consistently faster internet speeds than other VPN providers. Using ExpressVPN allows you to access content available in other countries, such as browsing and viewing different Netflix libraries, and also protects all of your internet browsing and personal information, encrypting your data, which is especially useful if using public Wi-Fi. I personally use ExpressVPN whenever I travel, ensured that no malicious individuals can spy on my internet traffic or steal my info. ExpressVPN is less than $7 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so take back your internet privacy today and find out how you can get 3 months free by clicking the link in the description box, expressvpn.com/TES. Take back your privacy today with ExpressVPN.
So you think you know Wix, but do you really? First up, we've got
SCP-2664, Redline. There's a common proverb that says that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The idea is that sometimes those who intend to do good things often end up doing far worse things than they intended, or they intentionally do horrific or evil things with good intentions in mind. It's a concept that crops up now and again in the SCP universe, as the SCP Foundation often does some pretty questionable stuff with the best of intentions. In a universe where plenty of different groups and individuals encounter or meddle with forces beyond their control or understanding, there's of course going to be unintended consequences, even if they think they're doing a good thing. SCP-2664 is an instance where some people tried to make the best of a bad order, with the end result being even worse. SCP-2664 is a psionic eigenweapon developed by GRU Division P, the anomalous investigation branch of the Soviet Union. It was developed on the orders of the then General Secretary Joseph Stalin between 1950 and 1961 under the name Project Redline, with the intention of acting as a psychic deterrent that would immediately brainwash the global populace into following the tenets of Soviet socialism. However, GRU Division P secretly designed it instead to mitigate and remove human tendencies towards violence. Physically, the weapon consisted of 3 Ukrainian triplets suffering from an extremely rare form of conjoinment, where their bodies are all joined at the head and thorax. In this case, each of their heads faced a separate direction, while their bodies joined at the navels. They possessed 3 arms total and 6 legs, although the extent of their internal conjoinment remains unknown. Psionically, they act as a single Gestalt entity with 3 mental subdivisions: a Control Division, Effector Division, and Receptor Division, pertaining to their physical selves, enabling it to perceive and interact with its environment. It's capable of self-levitation and long-range manipulation of objects that weigh up to 100 kilograms, although its psionic capabilities are primarily for affecting other sentient and sapient beings around it. Unshielded sentient organisms that come within a certain distance of the weapon, originally 100 meters, then 3 kilometers, and then 5 kilometers, will be subjected to severely altered brain chemistry and tissue mutation, particularly in the thalamus, prefrontal cortex, amygdala, hippocampus, and septum. Sapient beings then undergo a dramatic shift in personality, experiencing a 90% decrease in hormones linked to aggression and a general depression of the sympathetic nervous system. This induces an aversion to witnessing and engaging in violence, a severely diminished acute stress response, and a strongly negative reaction towards all forms of weaponry. Non-sapient beings, such as mice, suffer rapid onset spongiform encephalitis and toxic sulfate buildup, dying within minutes. Mentally, the entity is thought to possess the equivalent intelligence and disposition of a 6 to 10-year-old child, with its mental state likely having been adversely affected by GRU Division P's conditioning and training, which included electroshock therapy, attempted hypnosis, and exposure to large quantities of Soviet propaganda. The weapon was created in the former GRU Division P Psionic Research Facility, and until its transformation into an anomaly during the Foundation's first exploratory mission, the facility was designed and built in such a way as to diminish the strength of all psionic transmissions within the structure by 99.5%. To this end, it incorporated materials such as electrum into the insulation, and its layout was designed to maximize reflection and dissipation of psionic transmissions within the structure. The majority of the Foundation's knowledge of the weapon comes from a former Division P researcher, designated Iceman, who led numerous research and development projects for the Division, including the development of SCP-2664. On December 25th, 1962, Iceman defected to the Foundation, bringing with him thousands of classified Division documents and records encompassing a slew of different projects and initiatives, including 2664. The Soviet government officially denied knowledge of the existence of both the project and the facility, and as a result, the Foundation implicitly assumed custody of both. We're provided a transcript of an interview with Iceman, who begins by saying that he was a project manager in the Psychotronics division of the main intelligence directorate. When asked about Project Redline, he says that officially it was an initiative commissioned by Stalin in 1950 to create an ultra-powerful psychic weapon, one that could mentally convert people to follow the tenets of Marxism-Leninism doctrine. However, almost all of the members of the Psychotronics division, including him, were veterans of World War II. More than 20 million Soviets died in that war, and no one in the division, not even the chain of command, were eager to build another weapon so soon. Instead, they dreamed of freeing mankind from the necessity to make and use weapons at all, and so they secretly designed Redline to convert people into pacifists. This was all done in complete secrecy, of course, as the KGB would have killed or shipped everyone off to a gulag if they caught even a whiff of it. The process of creating Redline was complex, as they had to distill more than 20 years of psionics research and theory into a workable engineering problem. The basic theory was that the psionic capabilities of humans were limited by their bodies, and so a child might have 1,000 times more potential psionic energy than an adult, but only be able to practically output a tenth as much due to their underdeveloped body. They hypothesized that by subjecting a capable mind to massive psychological trauma and then inducing brain death, the person's mind, associated consciousness, and all of their psionic potential would disassociate from the body at the moment of death. They could then lock that mind into a controllable avatar. They initially tested and then refined the process on political prisoners, and once they were confident with their methodology, they began to look for children, since they were more malleable and easily trained. They struck gold in 1960, when the KGB brought in a set of conjoined triplets, horribly deformed and yet immensely capable. They determined that it was almost entirely their psionic abilities that was keeping them alive. They spent another year assessing and measuring the triplets' psionic abilities until they were finally ready to proceed. Over the course of 48 hours, they treated them with massive dosages of LSD, forced them to watch specially made propaganda, and then electrocuted them to death. The triplets' consciousnesses then disassociated, and they were able to capture them thanks to a redacted device. Iceman wants to make it clear that he is not proud of what they did, but he did it because he believed that their sacrifice would change the world for the better. The interviewer asks how they controlled and operated Redline, but Iceman's response is entirely redacted from the transcript. They move on to asking how Redline was tested, to which Iceman says they tested it a total of 5 times. The first 4 times, they brought it in front of increasingly larger groups of incarcerated, violent criminals, activated it, and then asked them to attack people whom they claimed had had them incarcerated. The fourth time, they brought Redline in front of the entire population of the Norlag Gulag, 50,000 of the most vicious criminals known to man. All of them dropped their makeshift knives and refused to move an inch, even as they threw the gates of the camp wide open. The fifth test involved using Redline on both Nikita Khrushchev and John F. Kennedy during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Even 10,000 kilometers away, in the middle of a remote mountain range, they were following the events in Cuba. They were certain that nuclear war was inevitable, and all their work would be for naught. They were terrified for humanity, so they fired Redline on Moscow, 4,000 kilometers away, and then on Washington, twice as far. They had no idea if it actually worked, as all they cared about was that war had been averted. He then says that perhaps they even caused their own downfall. Less than a week after the crisis ended, Khrushchev ordered that the division be closed down and all of its projects destroyed or put into storage. Psychotronics Command was furious, as it meant that they were almost entirely impotent in Soviet politics. They brought in a new psychic and ordered them to rework Redline into a more aggressive state. Iceman supposes that this was inevitable, as with Redline, they could strip entire armies of the will to fight, to resist, to breathe. They were to perform a conjunction, implanting Redline's consciousness into the new prisoner, and then disassociating it again, drastically amplifying its powers, but for conquest. He was disgusted by the idea, as it was a betrayal of the ideals for which they and the children had sacrificed so much. He decided to defect instead, and was lucky enough to have near unlimited access to the entire Division P library, and need to leave for Berlin during the week of Christmas. Those were the most terrifying weeks of his life, and he left for Berlin on the week that they were doing the conjunction process, fleeing and coming here. Following aerial reconnaissance of the mountain range and confirmation of the existence of the psionics research facility, 8 members of MTF Lambda 9, Mind Over Matter, were sent in to investigate. All members of the team were equipped with Keter-grade anti-psionic equipment and experimental hollow cavity firearms for inflicting maximum cerebral damage. Additionally, 2 of the members possessed scouting and offensive-grade psionic capabilities, one of them an experienced agent that had been team leader for 11 years, the other a new agent. The team is airdropped into the mountains, approximately 2.5 kilometers away from the facility, with a storm gradually forming over the area and lowering visibility. The team leader informs command that they might lose reception in this blizzard, and then tells the rest of the team that the plan is for 6 of them to go check out the facility, while the other 2 remain here to keep an eye on the helicopter. As the 6 approach, the 2 psionic members each report a sudden migraine as they travel nearer to the facility. As it comes into view, the team leader reports to command that it matches Iceman's description, being a big block of concrete with small windows and vents near the top. They can see 3 guard towers around the building, and the new psionic agent just performed a basic mental sweep, not picking up any living things outside of the facility. The team gets the main door open, and they head inside, at which point contact is lost with the entire infiltration team. 5 minutes later, one of the 2 agents remaining at the helicopter experiences a psionic sensation, allowing the team leader to use them to communicate from inside the facility. The leader reports that all of their radio equipment died as soon as they walked in, but his and the other psionic agents' capabilities are going crazy. They can still sense the two agents at the helicopter, but don't know how far away they are. And there's something different here that's allowing him to tap into one of the agents. He's not sure how to describe it, but it feels like something is spying on them. The team is standing on a double helix, vertically, and the moment they walked through the door, they were standing perpendicular to it. It's orange, green, purple, and red, and it just keeps going into this large, empty white space. He can't see a horizon, but there's a bunch of these orbs floating off in the distance. They're all kinds of colors, but he can't tell how far away they are. He's not even sure if they're that far away, but the helix just keeps going forever, not getting smaller. The door they came in is floating about 3 meters above them, and they can see the snow outside. One of the agents is going to try jumping up there, but after a brief pause, the agent that the leader is speaking through suddenly screams, and the leader begins swearing. He tells command that the agent tried jumping up to the door, but as soon as he jumped, it was like gravity suddenly came back. He couldn't make the jump and fell past the helix, and they can't see him anymore. He can still sense him, though, as he's still falling and screaming.
Work goes smoothly when you know the right steps. With Asana, you can coordinate tasks across teams and stay on track, so your team can spend more time celebrating wins. Try it for free at asana.com.
The team decides to continue forward to try and find another way out of here, and possibly find the falling agent at some point. 3 hours go by until the leader reports that they found something as the helix branches off into a doorway. He can see inside, and it looks to be a lab of some type, but after entering, they see that the only way out of it is back through the way they came. They decide to poke around the lab a bit, noting plenty of dusty tables with scientific equipment on them. The power still seems to be on, though, and they find a dead Russian in the corner of the room, sitting in a chair in front of an oscilloscope. The top of his skull is gone, and his brain is stretched out like silly putty, jammed into all of the equipment nearby. He isn't showing any signs of decomposition, however, aside from the dust. They scrape some of his brain off the wall as a sample, and decide to rest here for a few hours. In the meantime, the two agents out by the helicopter are forced to evacuate due to the worsening weather conditions. The Psionics Division recommends various breathing and meditation techniques to the two to lessen the demands of the psionic connection, and they return after the weather clears. As they do so, one of them gets taken over again, this time by the new psionic agent, who tells them that they've been trying to make contact for hours. They've been still waiting in the lab in the meantime, but are now going to continue down the helix. He mentions that he can still hear the falling agent screaming, and a couple of hours later says that they saw the agent falling past them. They're going to continue on, but they'll try to catch him if he comes by again. The team soon finds another door, leading to what seems to be another lab. 3 of the team head in to check it out, and the agent asks Command if they spoke to Iceman at all about what's going on here. But he disavowed all knowledge of the current state of the facility, even under intense interrogation. Inside the second lab, it looks to be similar to the first initially, but soon the agent reports that there are 8 bodies in the lab. The real concern with this, however, is that the corpses resemble the 8 members of the MTF, all wearing lab coats. They take some samples, but the psionic agent takes a break for several minutes outside of the lab, until he says that they're going to continue along the helix. 2 hours later, they hear from the agent again, as the team found another door. 2 of the agents go check it out, while the rest wait for the falling agent. 20 minutes later, the psionic agent says that he can feel the falling agent approaching. Something's wrong though, as it feels like he's falling directly towards them, and it feels like he's faking his screams now. The team takes their safeties off as the falling agent comes into view, approaching them directly, but he's naked now, and his arms are stretched out. The psionic agent notes that his screaming isn't getting louder, but rather that it's getting flatter. Suddenly, the agent out by the helicopter that they've been using to communicate through goes limp. He returns to consciousness a few minutes later and begins speaking immediately. The other agent outside asks what happened, and it turns out that it's currently one of the non-psionic agents speaking, without explanation as to how. Command asks the agent to say the passcode to confirm that it's actually him, which he does. The agent isn't sure how they're communicating psionically either, suggesting that maybe he's absorbing the psionic energy in this place. 3 of the other agents are gone, including the fresh psionic agent, and the team leader can't sense them at all. The agent speaking and the team leader were the ones checking out the door when the rest of the team saw the falling agent, so they're unclear as to what exactly happened. The 2 decide to continue on, possibly to try and find Redline, or a way outside. A few hours go by, until the agents report that it's getting darker and more washed out inside of the facility, remarking on it feeling heavier now. The agent's head is starting to hurt, and it smells like roasting human flesh. The agent reports that the sky has now gone black, but there's still plenty of orbs hanging around like jack-o'-lanterns. It feels like walking through a concentration camp, and the team leader says that he's sensing a lot of death echoes of a lot of people dying at once. The orbs then suddenly start to go dark as well, and the burning smell is getting worse. Then, everything becomes tiled, as if they're standing in some kind of giant doctor's office, and they see the rest of the team floating towards them. The agent outside then begins speaking in Russian, seemingly of a doctor speaking to the 3 Redline triplets, telling them that this won't take long, and they are making them proud. They're going to begin the disassociation process now, and the doctor promises them that it won't hurt, giving them some sugar candies and juice. Then the other agent outside begins speaking, with the team leader speaking now. He reports that the other agent was absorbed by the rest of the team, and he started floating in the middle of them until all of their brains burst out and mushed together. In response, he ran, but he can still feel it, and says that the thing spying on them is Redline. The other agent continues to speak in Russian, saying that they're making them so proud, and they need them to be peaceful. He tells them that they hate fighting because it's mean, and it's fun to not be mean. The leader says that this entire place, including the facility, the helixes, and the team, are all part of this thing's mind. They've been inside of it this whole time, and it's absorbed everything. It's all around him, and it's toying with him. The Russian voice says to stop and give in, as resisting is bad, and they'll be punished if they resist. The leader says that it's trying to open him up, like it did everyone else. He can see into it though, and says that it's learning from them, and it knows all about the Squad and the Foundation. They're almost on him, and says that it's the Conjunction. The last thing it knew before it died was that the scientists wanted it to conjunct, so it wants to make them part of it. He tells Command not to come back here, as it wants to make the whole world part of it. Communications then ceased with the two agents out by the helicopter, and simultaneously all members of the Psionics Division reported feeling a sudden compulsion to visit the mountain range, with several reporting that this was the first time they'd ever heard of it. At the same time, aerial reconnaissance of the range showed that the facility had abruptly disappeared and been replaced by an opaque, multicolored sphere, approximately 5 kilometers in diameter, centered on its original location. Subsequent attempts to investigate the sphere resulted in rapid growth of the sphere and the losses of all personnel involved. Based on the final logs transmitted by the MTF, as well as Redline's original documentation, the Psionics Division eventually devised the current method of containment, involving sending psionically stunted personnel and psionically dampening materials into the anomaly to slow its growth. For some time, the radius of the sphere increased at a rate of 1.5% per month, until December 25th, 2000, when the Psionics Division detected an unexpectedly high emission of psionic energy from the area, which resulted in the brain death of all humans within a 200-kilometer radius. At the same time, satellite footage showed the sphere growing at an abnormally high rate. All attempts to halt the growth failed, and Overwatch Command was informed of an impending YK-class end-of-the-world scenario. The following day, Foundation satellites observed a GOC weaponized satellite firing a spherical payload into the sphere. For the next 13 minutes, large quantities of radiation were emitted by the sphere, after which the sphere abruptly dematerialized, leaving only the spherical payload behind. Through unknown means, the payload then lifted into the air and escaped into the atmosphere. Following the event, no radiation or psionic energy could be detected in the area, and expeditions into the area were successful without issue. A few days later, SCP-2664 was reclassified as neutralized. Preliminary reports regarding the nature of the payload deployed by the GOC suggests that it is a demonics-based eigenweapon with the internal codename Gaius Prime. Further investigation is ongoing. So, to summarize everything then, Stalin wanted GRU Division P to make a psychic weapon that could simply convert the rest of the world into communists. The members of the Psychotronics Division, however, wanted to end wars and decided to make a weapon to convert everyone into pacifists. They did this by taking conjoined triplets and killing them, while subjecting them to massive psychological trauma, drugs, and propaganda. At the time of their death, they then managed to capture the triplets' disassociated consciousnesses, putting it into the weapon. This process seemed to work pretty perfectly, easily turning 50,000 vicious criminals into pacifists, and potentially bringing a stop to the Cuban Missile Crisis from across the world. Afterwards, though, Khrushchev ordered that the whole division be closed down, enraging Psychotronics Command. In response, they brought in a new psychic and ordered the division to make Redline more aggressive, as it could be an incredibly powerful weapon. They were to perform a conjunction, implanting Redline's consciousness into the new prisoner and then disassociating it again, amplifying its powers and turning it towards conquest.
This ended up being the big problem, as it absorbed everyone at the facility and anyone that approached it. It set its sights on the entire world, and eventually it began to expand outwards, with the Foundation having no way to stop it. In comes the GOC, however, who dropped a demonic weapon right into it. Within minutes, the demon neutralized Redline and flew off into the atmosphere. In the end, then, the problem wasn't necessarily that they tried to use this weapon to spread pacifism, although that idea has its own problems as well. The real threat came when those same people wanted to more forcefully enact said pacifism, creating a voracious anomaly that was worse than the original concept. It's rare for a group such as Division P to have a subsect of their members that defy orders to do their own thing. But perhaps it's even rarer that the GOC swoops in to save the day.
another job? There's a place in this region I've been eyeing for a while. I'll mark its location on your map for you. It's called Silver Shore Resort. You can find it to the west of here. Actually, it's a nursing home. Or it was, anyway, before Starfall. It's been abandoned ever since. I don't think it's very safe there, but that's why I'm hiring you, isn't it? I'm trying to understand more about how people treated the elderly and dying before Starfall. Why don't you see what you can dig up that might shed some light on that?
A deviation? What else? In this case, a truly terrifying one. I swear, this deviation goes far beyond what most are capable of, with horrifying effects. Before you came here, they never returned. So I don't know what kind of terrible end they met. But now that you're here, I'm counting on you. I'm by no means they chase down passers-by and drag them into pockets of rift space. And believe me, these aren't just... Please make sure you're well prepared when you go take on this deviation. Although I don't know what this deviation is. It must be contained.
if you've been getting scam texts like these, it was me. I said that probably means your data's been leaked, and I have all of it.
SCP-5520, the Rabbit Hole. Working for the SCP Foundation is not like working for a typical company. That much is obvious, of course, but I'm not just speaking about the risk of dying to anomalies or the frequent breaking of the universe's laws. Signing up to work for the Foundation is often a lifelong commitment, demanding a life of secrecy and loyalty. While the exact specifics of the Foundation's hiring process is up to interpretation, there's no doubt that if the Foundation hires someone, they're going to be pretty committed to the Foundation's ideals and goals. SCP-5520 focuses around a couple of Foundation researchers and their loyalty to the organization, along with the price of that loyalty. SCP-5520 is listed as Archon class, meaning that while it could theoretically be contained, it shouldn't be, for one reason or another. The containment procedures state that containment of 5520 is unnecessary at the moment, although if it becomes necessary, Sundown Protocol must be initiated, which involves opening the bulkhead gates to Lake Huron and flooding the Acro-Amatic Abatement Facility. SCP-5520 is former SCP Foundation senior researcher and provisional site co-director Dr. Wynne Riderick. He is now a Class 3 reality bender as a result of long-term exposure to esoteric materials. Correspondence with him has revealed serious and progressive cognitive impairment, dissociation, depersonalization, derealization, and both retrograde and anterograde amnesia. He remains aligned with the goals of the Foundation, however, but no longer answers directly to the executive structure. He presently resides in a series of vast caverns and refineries located beneath Site-43, classified Acro-Amatic Abatement Facility AAF-W by former site director Dr. Vivian Leslie Scout. Although the facilities themselves exhibit no anomalous properties, their scale, location, and the activities performed there do. Both manual and automatic cave surveying techniques have been unable to determine the precise extent of AAF-W, but best estimates suggest over 2 million cubic meters of interior space. A breathable oxygen atmosphere pervades throughout, presumably as a result of Wynne's activities. Alright, so we have a Foundation member that has since become a reality bender due to spending so much time around anomalies, and is now located deep underneath a Foundation facility, where he continues to work in alignment with the Foundation's goals. Before we continue on, let me quick give some backstory as to what's going on here. Site-43 is the center of the On Guard 43 canon, a rather extensive hub of various storylines and articles that focus around various personnel and the often creative solutions they devise for containing things at Site-43. Despite their atypical approach to containing some very tricky-to-contain anomalies, they have an admirable containment breach record. One of the key things done at Site-43 is Acro-Amatic Abatement, which simply means that they deal with solutions for all of the anomalous gunk that is constantly created by various anomalies, such as the reddish-brown substance created by SCP-173. Dealing with enough anomalous goop is bound to create some other weird stuff in the same area, and it seems that Wynne himself became affected after enough years. Wynne headed the Foundation's effort to manage the toxic materials generated by its collected objects from 1915 to 1966, with his Acro-Amatic Abatement Group moving from Vienna, Austria, to Provisional Site-43 in Canada in 1943, where he became co-director with Dr. Vivian Scout. Under Wynne's direction, the Applied Occultism and Acro-Amatic Abatement sections of Site-43 became the foremost facilities for studying and neutralizing esoteric effluence on Earth. When Site-43 was upgraded from provisional status in 1965, Dr. Scout became the site director with Wynn's sponsorship. Wynn subsequently disappeared from Site-43 on the 14th of November 1966, after 51 years of employment. A search of his dedicated research laboratory and Achromatic Abatement Facility AAF-A found it significantly altered and its 43 staff members absent. Wynn's notes revealed dozens of conflicting, frequently incoherent or unintelligible programs of research, suggesting that his disappearance had been voluntary. The entire site was immediately placed on alert, and Dr. Scout ordered the Pursuit and Suppression Section to investigate the facility further. 6 members of MTF Delta 43 are sent into the facility and head down to the basement sublevel, which should be the lowest point of the facility. The team lead reports that there are considerably more pipes in the wall than the schematics show, and he can't be sure without touching them, but some of them look like they're made out of bone or porcelain. There's an open door leading to a stairwell going down nearby, so the team proceeds down the steps. They exit out into a glass-walled tunnel with cave walls visible on the other side of the glass, illuminated through unknown means. At the other end of the tunnel, it opens up into a very large cave system, with one of the team remarking that this place looks like the facility did in the 40s when they were first building it. They continue on, soon finding some of Wynn's researchers, examining some pipes and taking notes. They approach them with caution, calling out, although the researchers show no response to the MTF, even when snapping their fingers in front of their faces. For now, the team continues on, moving through 5 more sublevels of this new underground facility, before finding a closed door. It doesn't seem to be locked, so they slowly open it. On the other side, the team leader reports that he sees what appears to be an underground ravine. He can't even begin to speculate on how deep it is, but there are structures along the walls and at the bottom. It looks like a natural cave system that was augmented with artificial construction consistent with the other alterations they've seen so far. Another team member says that it looks like somebody turned 10 factories inside out and stacked them. Control asks if it looks like this ravine and its contents are larger than AAF-A, but the team leader responds that this ravine and its contents are larger than Site-43. The MTF was recalled to regroup and plan further investigations, although the research personnel were not re-encountered on the way back. Keeping in mind that this takes place in 1966, the Identity and Technocryptography section of the site had recently completed the installation of an experimental site-wide computer system with a rudimentary command line interface. When the team returned to Wynn's office, they discovered that his networked printer had produced the following message for Dr. Scout. Vivian, I blame the comic books. I started reading them as a middle-aged man. Something frivolous to take my mind off of toxicants and virions and threshold limit values. Something fantastical. I do some of my best work when I'm distracted. So many of those old superheroes were scientists, just like us. They got their superpowers because something stupid but scientific happened to them. Jay Garrick inhaled heavy water vapor, and instead of gaining nothing, he gained super speed. Rex Tyler created a 1-hour strength pill and started popping them like an addict. Ted Knight found the cure for gravity, and he used it to fly around and beat people up. My idiotic idols. I swear, Viv, I didn't intentionally expose myself to esoteric materials. Then again, neither did the Flash.
There were accidents, of course, even back in Europe. A drop here, a shattered cask there, an accidental exposure every once in a while. I thought nothing of it when my pants started staying up without a belt, or I stayed warm in cold weather, or I didn't need to use the washroom unless I thought about it. Just getting fat and hot and slow and absent-minded, I thought. Now, of course, I know it was just the maintenance of my self-image. Sometimes I'd wake up sweating in the middle of the night and find myself wearing my three-piece suit and tie. Sometimes I'd look in the mirror and see my hair was red again. Red like it hasn't been since the Great War. Once, only once, I had a long telephone conversation with my wife without remembering to dial out of the facility. Or remembering that she's dead. I know what this is, and you know too. I'm Dr. Fate. I'm bending reality on my knee. Things turn out the way I want them to, or the way I think they should be. I'm starting to be able to direct it now, which scares the ever-loving you-know-what out of me. You know how we've made such great strides these past months? How all of our experiments have turned out perfectly? That's because I wanted them to. I've willed them to. Where there's a will, there's a way. But I don't have the will to be put in a cage. And you don't have a way of fixing what's wrong with me without putting me in a cage. So, at the risk of belaboring the metaphor, I have to go away. I hope I'll be back soon. In the meantime, I'll keep in touch. Do you remember what I told you at the lake, Vivian? Now is the time. I'm counting on you. Win. Technicians also reported that the terminal in Wynn's office was now networked with a printer in an unknown location. After consulting with the security and containment section, Dr. Scout began correspondence with Wynn via the terminal and printers. Their first conversation with this method reads, Wynn, please return to the site. We can help you. No, you can't. But I can help you. From down here. We've got the finest doctors in the world on our side, Wynn. Precisely. The finest doctors in the world can't stop what's happening to me. I'm a toxicologist, Vivian. I've done the research. You're a toxicologist too, so please, don't lie to me. Think of your staff, Wynn. Is this what they wanted? My staff don't exist. What? My staff don't exist. I invented them. My whole department was filled with phantoms I imagined into existence. I'm just imagining them down here now. Check their employment records. You'll see what I mean. You know why there were 43 of them? So I wouldn't forget how many there were and call down an investigation on my head. I've had this condition for a long time now. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. We can fix this together, Wynn. You and I. Why do you keep repeating my name? Do you think I don't know who I am? I don't want you to see me like this. It's better if I stay down here. What do you expect me to do? Let you hide out underground until you suffocate or starve to death? I expect you to be a scientist and let me alone to do my work. I'm close to a breakthrough now. Very close. Just think of this as an extended research sabbatical, and I'll be back as good as new before long. Now whose line, Wynn? Wynn? Dr. Riderick was subsequently classified as SCP-520, although this was later updated to use the present-day classification of SCP-5520. The duplicate AAF-A facility was thoroughly examined over the next 14 months, revealing that it, like the original, had fallen out of use. It was determined that Wynn and his Phantom staff had moved into the larger facility in the caverns, which had by then expanded twofold. As Wynn had not corresponded with Site-43 at all during this period, Dr. Scout instructed the MTF to rappel down into the larger structure and investigate it. We're given a partial transcript of their exploration from February of 1968. Upon approach to the cavernous facility, the team leader reports seeing a skyscraper of machinery, with gantries, pipes, tanks, and chimneys protruding from the cave floor, calling it one of the biggest buildings in the country, and certainly the biggest thing underground. The first section of the facility they explore resembles the original achromatic abatement facility in Vienna, while the second section of the facility is unfamiliar to the team. The Phantom researchers from before are also no longer present. The team leader remarks that he doesn't think this section was built to match any existing facilities, as the walls are orange. Dr. Scout gets on the comms, however, and asks if the orange walls have a gray stripe down the middle, which they do. He says that that's the toxicity lab from Cardiff, where they both studied together. They didn't have fluorescent lights then, however, although Dr. Scout says that Wynn might not be himself right now, and that they should keep that in mind. The team turns a corner into a large room filled with shining copper pipes, and Wynn standing in the middle of the room, pointing at each pipe and nodding. He turns to face the agents as they enter and begins to weep. He says that he won't remember tomorrow, and won't even remember tomorrow. He doesn't even remember tomorrow today. He then asks if he was a friend of yours, as the team reports to command that they have eyes on Wynn, and he looks unharmed, although a little shaken. Control tells them to bring him in, so they approach. Wynn says that he gets confused sometimes, and when they ask him to come with them, he apologizes and says that that was his fault, but then questions if it was his fault. Clearly, he's not thinking straight, and one of the pipes nearby begins to vibrate intensely, creating a deafening sound, although Wynn is still audible. He asks, where did he go, as one of the team reaches out to steady the pipe. When he touches it, he disappears completely, and Wynn remarks that he wouldn't touch that. The sound then abruptly ceases, and the recording ends, as the 5 remaining members of the team were returned by Wynn through unknown means to the top-level facility. A message was already waiting for Dr. Scout in Wynn's original office, reading, Vivian, I'm sorry about your man. You won't be seeing him again. I've connected my facility to AAF-A. Please send any new substances down the pipeline to me, and I'll see what I can do with them. Why would we do that? You're not a Foundation researcher anymore. You're an SCP object. That's a good approach to take. I've seeded the facility walls with a compound that will expand to fill its container, immobilizing anything it touches and anesthetizing humanoids. It's water activated, so all you have to do is open the floodgates to my cavern and you'll be rid of me. Oh yes, my cavern has floodgates now. I hope the underwater panthers won't mind. These were their tunnels. Did you know that? They used them to travel between the lakes. I'm sure you won't be surprised to hear that
literally nothing in those oral histories was wrong. No response. I suppose I can't blame you. So, you have special containment procedures for me now. We'll call that our framework for a working relationship. Take my proposal to O5s and the Ethics Committee. Let them handle it. We both know you're too close to the issue. The good work goes on, Vivian. It must.
It's time to redefine web hosting with Bluehost Cloud, the new platform built for WordPress creators by WordPress experts. Host lightning-fast websites with 100% network uptime, all with 24/7 priority tech support. With Bluehost Cloud, the possibilities are out of this world. Experience Bluehost Cloud at bluehost.com.
Safe Flight Repair.
Perfecting your swing is hard.
Nice shot, Dad.
Mother, father, sister, brother.
Safe Flight Replace.
But replacing your windshield doesn't have to be. Go to safelight.com and we can come to you.
Sick.
Our highly trained techs can replace your windshield where you are, even if that's right in your driveway.
Have a good day. I love you.
SafeLight makes it easy. Go to safelight.com and schedule a replacement today.
Safe Flight Repair. Safe Flight Replace. Woo!
By order of the O5 Council, Site 43 began employing Wynn from this point forward as a consultant researcher. And despite Dr. Scout strongly objecting to this, he agreed to remain as Wynn's point of contact. The Foundation began sending problematic substances down to AAF-W, and geological measurements indicated that the artificial complex grew at a slow, steady rate every day for the next 3 decades. The efficiency of the Site 43 facilities improved at a commensurate rate, and Wynn frequently delivered ad hoc research papers and chemical formulations to the Foundation via the printer in his former office. We're given a partial collection of the various messages between Dr. Scout and Wynn. January 24th, 1969. All right, Wynn. We're sending you something very caustic now. Ah, you're finally coming down for a visit. I've missed you. I'll tell security and containment that you've still got your sense of humor. Maybe it'll put them at ease. In any event, please see what you can do with this stuff. If we can ameliorate it, we can lock up the object creating it for good. I'll take a look, but my sympathies are with the object, for obvious reasons. October 13th, 1970. How are you holding up down there? I've developed a method for stripping the human body of its mucous membrane. What? Why? That's not what you were supposed to be working on. I'm going to cure catarrh and the common cold. The mucous membrane keeps us from getting sick, Wynn. Oh. But you know that, right? Of course I do. I was just joking. To put you all at ease, remember? June 4th, 1971. We can't make sense of the data you're sending us. It's elementary enzyme design, Vivian. We haven't invented enzyme design yet, Wynn. Oh. Well, let me know when you have, then. June 29th, 1972. Stop it. Stop what, Wynn? Stop flushing your goddamn toilets on me, whoever you are. July 4th, 1972. Are you there? I'm sorry about last time. I got a little confused. Yes. Well,
We're working on that problem for you. Is there anything else you need? How are those floodgates doing? The floodgates are fine. Maybe you should test them. What do you mean? Win. What do you mean? August 17th, 1973. I'm sending you the chemical equations and synthesis outline for a new antipsychotic developed at Site 19. It will completely suppress your reality-bending symptoms. I want you to make it, and I want you to take it, and I want you to come back home. Vivian, what a clever formula. Thank you so much for sending me this. It's right up my alley. I'm sending you a list of chemical and procedural improvements. The shots should work much faster now. But did you take it, Win? Win. December 19th, 1975. This is what you wanted, isn't it? What do you mean? I know who you are. I know what you did. You put me here. You're keeping me here. You want me here. Out of the way. You went down there on your own. I want you to come home. Do you think I'm stupid? Do you think I don't understand? I hope you never forget what you did to me. I hope you never forget what you're doing to me. December 21st, 1975. Vivian? Where are you? Vivian? I'm sorry. At this point, Dr. Scout reiterated his opposition to the project and refused to participate any further. Wynn continued to transmit regular messages, however, apparently unaware, most of the time, of Dr. Scout's departure. We're given some more of these messages. June 11th, 1976. Does chirality exist, Vivian? This is a serious question. Does chirality exist? Or is it something I made up? This is a serious question. March 8th, 1979. I don't remember my eyes. August 17th, 1980. Where are you, Vivian? Why aren't you here? Please find attached 500 pages of Toxidrome reports. August 17th, 1980. Why doesn't it ever rain down here, Vivian? It should rain down here. I need it to rain down here. December 21st, 1985. Yesterday, I cured cancer. Today, I can't remember how. Unless I'm imagining curing cancer yesterday. Or imagining I've forgotten how. Or imagining cancer. Or imagining yesterday. Or imagining today. Or May 6th, 1988. Please find attached one page of words. They're the right ones. January 18th, 1990. I've drawn up new manuals for AAF-C, Vivian. Please make sure you follow them to the letter when we build the facility 20 years ago. You don't want a repeat of what I just thought about. September 12th, 1991. I know you're not Vivian. On February 9th, 1996,
Dr. Scout attempted to enact the Sundown Protocol, which would have decommissioned SCP-5520. Safeguards installed under O5 instructions prevented this from occurring, however, and Dr. Scout was summoned for immediate questioning. O58 asks him why he did what he did, and Dr. Scout says that Wynn gave his life to the Foundation, all of it, from start to finish, and he owed Wynn this courtesy. O58, however, says that what he calls a courtesy, they might call an execution. Wynn's life is not finished. Dr. Scout counters, though, that what O5 meant was that they aren't finished with Wynn's life. They're not talking about someone's abandoned grandfather who just needs his loved ones to visit and brighten his day. They're not talking about someone with cognitive impairment who just needs patience and affection and rewarding work to live a meaningful life. Not anymore. They're talking about someone who's been completely alone and out of his mind for 30 years. Most of Wynn Riderick is gone, and what's left is crying out for help, and they're not listening. He's asked them time and time again to let him bring Wynn back up here and to see if they can help him. He might never be the same, but at least he wouldn't be alone. He could live a real human life in the light. He would still be brilliant. He would still be Wynn if they could manage his condition. But they continue to refuse him time and time again, and he's come to realize that they're never going to let Wynn get better. They're going to keep him sick in the dark for all eternity if they can, so that they can benefit from his sickness. They are perpetuating a falsehood through anomalous means because it is convenient for them. That's not the Foundation that he or Wynn signed up to work for or built. 058 says that he's one to talk about anomalous perpetuation, facetiously referring to him as Mr. Baggins and asking if he's 11 years old now. Dr. Scout, however, says that he's still himself, unlike Wynn. He left specific instructions for him on the matter, and his wishes are the only ones that should count. It's his life, and he put it in Scout's hands, trusting him as his friend and as his partner. 058 remarks that he has access to the Infonet feed and has seen what Wynn is saying. Last week, he asked Dr. Scout to look in on Ashley, which doesn't seem like someone who's dissociating to him. Dr. Scout counters that 058 has no idea